Every now and then you stumble upon a connection in history that is just, well, it's mind-blowing. And today, we're diving into one of those, an absolutely incredible, almost hidden link between the world of deep psychology and a program that has literally saved millions of lives. Okay, let's get into it.
This quote really gets to the heart of what we're talking about today, this idea that to get out of your own head, to escape your own struggles, you have to find a purpose, something bigger than yourself. It's a powerful concept, and it's central to the story we're about to uncover.
So, a world-famous psychiatrist and Alcoholics Anonymous. What's the connection? Well, it turns out it's everything. We're about to connect some fascinating dots here, and you'll see how a complex psychological theory became the bedrock for one of the most effective recovery programs on the planet.
All right, first things first. To really get this story, we have to start with a core concept from the psychologist Carl Jung. We need to talk about his idea of the shadow.
So, what in the world is the shadow? Well, Jung called it the blind spot of the psyche. Think of it like this. It's all the stuff about ourselves we just don't want to look at. The impulses, the personality traits, the parts of us we've shoved down into the basement of our minds because they don't fit the good person image we're trying to project.
Now, it's really easy to hear the word shadow and just think it's all bad stuff, pure evil. But that's a huge misconception. Jung argued it's also where our untapped potential lives. I mean, think about it. Maybe your creativity or your assertiveness was shamed out of you as a kid, so you repressed it. You push that vitality right into the shadow. So the goal isn't to destroy it, it's to bring it into the light and integrate it.
And this is where it gets really crucial for our story. Jung had this pretty radical view of addiction. He didn't see it as some moral failing or a lack of willpower. Nope. He saw it as a symptom of a psyche at war with itself. He called it a misguided spiritual thirst for wholeness. When you're disconnected from your shadow, you feel fragmented, broken, and alcohol creates this temporary, false feeling of being whole again. It's a desperate search for a spiritual solution, just in all the wrong places.
Okay, so that's the theory. But how did this abstract idea from a Swiss psychiatrist's office manage to spark a global movement? This is where the story gets really, really good.
I mean, can you even imagine hearing this from one of the greatest minds of the 20th century? A patient named Rowland Hazard came to Jung for his chronic alcoholism. After a relapse, Jung basically told him, look, my science can't help you. You are, from a medical and psychological standpoint, a hopeless case. And then he said his only chance was to have a vital spiritual experience. He was essentially prescribing a spiritual rock bottom because psychology had hit a wall.
And what happened next was this incredible domino effect, a chain reaction. Rowland actually takes Jung's advice. He finds a spiritual community, the Oxford group, and gets sober. But he doesn't keep it to himself. He passes this message of a spiritual solution to his friend, Ebby Thacher, and Ebby in turn shares it with his old drinking buddy, a man named Bill Wilson. And that single conversation, that was the spark that ignited Alcoholics Anonymous. It's just wild to think it all traces back to that one moment in Jung's office.
Now, fast forward a few decades. The story comes full circle in this remarkable exchange of letters that gives us the perfect, elegant formula for this entire process.
Right, so the year is 1961. Bill Wilson, by now the famous co-founder of AA, writes a letter to an elderly Carl Jung. He's essentially reaching out to say thank you. He tells Jung how that hopeless diagnosis he gave Rowland Hazard all those years ago started the whole thing. And Jung, just months before his own death, wrote back immediately.
And in that reply, Jung boils down his entire philosophy on addiction into this one elegant Latin phrase, spiritus contra spiritum, spirit against spirit. So what does that actually mean? This is where the genius of it lies. The Latin word spiritus has this amazing double meaning. On one hand, it refers to a volatile liquid, spirits like alcohol. But on the other hand, it means spirit in the highest sense, a deep, religious, or spiritual experience. Jung was using this play on words to make a profound point. And here it is, the core of the formula. Jung is saying that the craving for the low-level spirit of alcohol is just a distorted echo of that deeper, legitimate spiritual thirst for wholeness. So the solution isn't to just fight the poison. You have to replace the destructive spirit with a constructive one of equal or greater power. You have to find a higher spirit to counteract the lower one.
This all sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually do that? How do you put this profound idea into action? Well, the answer is woven directly into the 12 steps.
If you just look at the very beginning of the journey, the first few steps are all about surrender, admitting you're powerless, coming to believe in something bigger than you. This is exactly that ego collapse that Jung knew was essential before any real change could happen. But then you get to step 4, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And that, my friends, is where the shadow work kicks into high gear.
When you lay it out like this, the parallels are just undeniable. The 12 steps are, in effect, a practical step-by-step guide for doing Jungian shadow work. Step 1, admitting powerlessness, that's the ego collapse. Steps 4 and 5, the moral inventory and admission, that is a direct confrontation with the shadow. Steps 8 and 9, making amends, that's all about repairing the damage from projecting your shadow onto others. And then step 12, well, that embodies another powerful Jungian idea.
So what's the ultimate goal of all this difficult transformative work? Where does it all lead? Well, it goes way beyond just not drinking.
See, when you finally start to integrate the shadow, there's a profound shift inside you. All that psychic energy you were using to keep those hidden parts of yourself locked away is suddenly liberated. It's freed up. And this leads to greater authenticity, a new sense of purpose, and what Jung called psychological wholeness. You're no longer fighting yourself.
And this brings us to that final, beautiful archetype, the wounded healer. This is the absolute essence of the 12th step, carrying the message to others. It's the idea that the very source of your deepest pain and suffering is transformed into your greatest gift. Your wounds become the source of healing, not just for you, but for the people you help.
Ultimately, this incredible story reveals a universal human truth. The path to a more authentic, vital life requires us to look into our own blind spots. And that really leaves a question for all of us, doesn't it? What parts of yourself have you pushed into the dark? And what untapped creativity, strength, and vitality are just waiting there to be reclaimed?